Hello, and welcome to Prose and Performance, brought to you by the Laguna Woods Publishing Club. I'm Michael Pontecorvo, and for the next 60 minutes, we will listen to 5 Laguna Woods writers read works they have written. The pieces range from fiction to descriptions of real-life adventures. My hope is you will enjoy hearing these authors read their own works. I hope you will find them engaging, intriguing, and memorable. So, without further ado, let's begin.
Hi, I'm Barb Torino, and I'm here today to read you a chapter from my book, Getting Your Act Together. Enjoy. All the world's a stage, and all the people merely players. Shakespeare wrote that. He knew the secret to success long before our day. Yes, the entire world is a stage, and we are on that stage every day. We cannot afford to miss opportunities to get our act together and razzle-dazzle our audience. Consider the following scenario and how you would react. You go to the theater for an evening's entertainment. You pay your hard-earned money for the tickets and you expect to be entertained. But just before the show begins, the director comes on stage to make an announcement. Thank you for coming to our show tonight. We appreciate your patronage. However, I'd like to take this time to offer you an apology. Our lead actor is having a terrible day. His kids are failing in school, his dog is ill, and he's suffering from a terrible headache. We know that you'll understand and hope that you'll forgive us if his performance is only mediocre tonight. After all, we all have bad days. We thank you for your understanding and our continued support of our theater. Ridiculous, right? I can see you laughing. There's no way we would put up with that kind of behavior. As an audience member or as a consumer, we don't think about what kind of a day the actor or the service provider we visit is having. We simply don't want it to interfere with his performance. We consider the performer a professional and expect from him the very best that he has to offer. We will settle for nothing less, and we won't come back if we're disappointed. Why do we expect any less from ourselves when we go to our jobs or we interact with others? We too are professionals, no matter what we do. Our customers and coworkers and friends and even family expect our best, regardless of whether we're having a bad day or what emotions we are experiencing. Behavior we would never excuse in the theater is tolerated in our lives every day. Like actors, we must be conscious of our performance, striving to prevent our own attitude, whatever it is, from adversely affecting our behavior or interaction with others. So, let's have an attitude adjustment, or better yet, let's accept for now the premise that our feelings on any given day are unimportant to our customers, bosses, coworkers, friends, and at times our family members. In a professional performance role, all that is important is your behavior. If you act as if you are a professional who's expected to perform at her highest level, then how you feel becomes secondary. When people act as they are expected and maybe even required to behave, they provide superior service and memorable behaviors. Others recognize that and appreciate it. And when others are pleased with our performance, well, that's just another way of receiving a standing ovation. Whether you realize it or not, you are on stage all day, every day. So you must consciously give your very best performance regardless of how you feel. Now, obviously, you want to be true to yourself. Just relax and have fun with your life. but realize that most of the time, your performance needs to be your best. The famous television host, Dr. Phil McGraw, says, behave your way to success. And Dr. Laura Schlesinger preaches every day on her radio talk show that your feelings are not important, your actions are. So I say, act as if, and the emotions will follow. An interesting phenomenon occurs when you learn this technique and practice it. Because feelings are brought about by actions, you will begin to feel the way you are acting. When you act as if, the emotions will follow. The law of reversal means that you can actually act your way into feelings. Now, most people wait until they feel a certain way and then they act on those feelings. Sometimes they even act out a feeling that is inappropriate. Like when they wake up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed, yell at their spouse and children, and then go to work or a committee meeting, and they treat their customers, their colleagues, or their friends to a poor performance. Many people believe that their behavior can't be pleasant unless they feel happy. They find it difficult to act in ways that don't reflect their emotional state at any given moment. The law of practice states that practice develops habits. And did you know it takes 21 to 30 days to make or break a habit? Now, creating this new habit will not make you feel comfortable or sincere at first. In fact, it'll probably take all of the acting skills that you possess. The good news, however, is that if you practice acting in the ways that you want to feel, then almost magically, you will start to feel that way. Act enthusiastic, and you will be enthusiastic. Humphrey Bogart said it best. The only thing you owe the public is a good performance. Now, here is my out-of-the-box solution. Your feelings are not important. Take your attitude and your feelings out of the equation and behave appropriately and respectfully. Two wonderful phrases that I love to use to give feedback or coaching is, I understand the emotion, but the behavior is inappropriate. And a good argument does not change the reality of the situation. So every day, each of us makes choices, both consciously and unconsciously, to behave or act in certain ways. Although many believe that feelings cannot be controlled, everyone is responsible for his actions, the way that he or she acts. We can choose appropriate behavior regardless of our thoughts and feelings, regardless of how intense they are within us. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't be in touch with our feelings. It's helpful to understand what you're feeling at any given moment. And it's not always possible to prevent yourself from feeling a certain way. However, you decide whether you act on those feelings. To be successful at your work and in your life, you must often act appropriately despite what you feel. When you're having a bad day, when all sorts of things are going wrong, when you feel grumpy or angry, but when you interact with others, you can choose to be professional, friendly, and courteous in spite of your feelings rather than acting out with anger. Although we cannot always choose our feelings about events in our work or in our personal life, it's crucial that we choose appropriate responses. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm in no way suggesting that our behavior should be fake or false. On the contrary, our behavior must be governed by a sincere desire to provide service, or people are going to see right through your actions as a facade. So stay consciously aware of your established goals. to exceed people's expectations and provide the highest level of service possible. Examine your feelings and thoughts and ask yourself, what behaviors should I exhibit right now that will best reflect my mission and core values? Ultimately, the quality of your life is directly dependent upon the choices you make. Now, some of us are actors, and of course, we understand this concept, and we know that the show must go on. The audience never knows what the actors are personally thinking or feeling. We have no idea who the actors truly are, and that is by design. The only person we see is the one they want us to see. Maybe that's why so many people like to read the tabloids. They want to get the inside scoop to find out if some actor is not as nice as he appears on the screen or the stage. The same is true for all professionals. Being professional always requires that we act like professionals. In Sanford Meisner's book, Sanford Meisner on Acting, the famous teacher says an ounce of behavior is worth a pound of words. He tells his students to be real on stage, to really do it. Don't just act like you're doing it. And if you are really doing it, you don't have time to watch yourself doing it. Meisner says to his students during an acting exercise, nobody gives a damn how you feel, you know. Nobody cares. We care when your concern about how you feel hurts your performance. Most great teachers have mastered this act of turning the classroom into the stage to keep their students engaged. They use acting skills to perform whether they feel like it or not. Lawyers in the courtroom, they make the courtroom their stage. So for teachers, the class is the stage. For lawyers, the courtroom is their stage. What is your stage? Is it your office, the customer service counter, the retail store, a meeting with friends or family? The next time your feelings or attitude start to determine your actions or behaviors, remember the story about the director at the beginning of this chapter and get your act together, smile, and act as if all is well. You are a professional on stage with a job to do. Remember this, and it will help you to exceed the expectations of all of those with whom you come into contact. The late Marlon Brando said it well. Everyone has suffered moments when you are thinking one thing or feeling one thing and not showing it. That is acting. Shirley MacLaine sums it up beautifully in her book, I'm Over All That, when she says, all life, even the cruelest drama and the most absurd comedy, is a form of show business, a kind of performance. And I have been lucky enough to have created the moving picture show of my own life. I have starred in it, produced it, written it, directed it, even financed and distributed it. What's even better is that I get to rerun it now and then to see things I might have missed back then. Shirley says, I learned long ago that living is acting, and it always has been. Every day we choose what script we will write for ourselves, how we will play our part, what wardrobe will we wear, what emotions will we allow ourselves to feel or repress. She goes on to say, I am the writer, producer, wardrobe mistress, star, and director of my own play every day that I live. So what will be your life's show? Will you be a star and get rave reviews and standing ovations? I hope my book helps you do just that. Start every day by waking up and saying to yourself, oh, what a beautiful morning. And remember, there's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Places, please.
name is Howard Schneider. I'm going to read a story to you that I had written several years ago. All that glitters is not gold. I wish there was some other way. That jewelry is all I've got left from my family. It was Grandma's. I know I don't never wear any of it, but that don't mean I don't treasure it. It'd be awfully hard on me to have to sell it, the woman said sadly, tears welling in her eyes. But they were desperate. Her husband had lost his job at the mine the month before. They had discharged him with a paltry 2 weeks' pay after the accident. The tunnel roof had caved in when the old shoring gave way. 3 of the men were hurt. All 3 were let go. It seems just being in the wrong place at the wrong time in a West Virginia coal mine is all it takes for a man to lose his job. And with precious other little opportunities for employment, it meant a bleak future. A month later, the restaurant where she had been waitressing for the past 8 years closed up. It was run out of business by the sleek new diner out by the state highway that offered more food for less money. It wasn't nearly as tasty as it was at the Mineshaft Cafe, but being cheaper was what counted with times as hard as they were. The man and the wife had no cash, no savings, and no credit. The rent on the company house was past due, and the kitchen cupboard was empty. Their 2 little boys had to be fed and cared for. They truly were desperate. The only possibility would be to sell the collection of gold jewelry the woman had inherited when her grandmother died in a car crash many years before. The jewelry had been left to her grandmother by the rich aunt in Baltimore. It was the only thing the woman and her husband had of any value. If only there were some other alternative, but there wasn't. Where could we sell it? Who would buy it? The woman asked her husband, wiping away the tears. There's one of them jewelry stores down there in Caldwell. Maybe they would, her husband said. There's a sign in the window that says they buy gold, he added a moment later. Maybe they'd cheat us. Can we trust them? She asked. I surely don't know. Guess we'd have to find out, he answered. Don't see no other way, do you? No, I don't rightly know of any other way, she said in a quiet voice. The next day, the man and the woman took the wife's treasure to the jewelry store in Caldwell, a bigger town down in the valley. She took the list out of the pocket of her faded dress and handed it to the man who had greeted them when they came through the door. Then she opened her purse and withdrew a small, frayed cloth bag and carefully laid it on the counter. The list was neatly printed in pencil on the back of an old pay envelope. 1 gold bracelet with colored glass laid in. 1 gold ring with round piece of red glass. 1 gold ring with piece of green glass. 2 gold earrings with glass beads hanging down. 1 gold pendant on gold chain with heavy piece of glass attached. How much can you give us for this gold? The husband asked the jeweler after he unloosened the drawstring and spilled the contents into the tray the man had set in front of the woman. The man glanced at the items in the tray, then picked up his eyepiece and proceeded to closely examine each piece. He made a little scratch on the inside of one of the rings. He did the same thing with the bracelet. Finally, he looked up, first at the man, then at the woman. Slowly shaking his head, he said, "Sorry, ma'am, but this metal isn't gold. It's just brass with a thin coating of gold gilt. For me, it's not worth messing with. It has no cash value." The woman and her husband were devastated. Fighting back hard to hold back the tears, she started gathering up the jewelry to put back in a little cloth bag as her husband turned and started towards the door. "But I would be interested in selling the gems for you," the man said. "Gems?" the woman asked. "Ain't they just glass? That's what my grandma said." Her husband turned back to the jeweler. "You saying those ain't just glass?" "Why, no, they're not glass at all. Your grandmother was flat out wrong. This one," holding up the flower-shaped pendant, "is a 4-carat, cushion-cut, flawless diamond, the best I've ever seen. And this one," picking up one of the rings, "is a near-perfect 2-carat Burmese ruby. This one," pointing to the green stone, "is an unusually clear emerald with brilliant color. And these faceted earring stones are beautiful fire opals." He then picked up the bracelet and earnestly described the finer points of the exquisite sapphire and ruby inlay as if the woman were a fellow jeweler and understood the technical terms he was using. He carefully examined each piece once again. When finished, he took a small pad from his shirt pocket and wrote down some numbers. He studied them for a moment, then looked up at the woman's husband. "I could only pay $5,000 now, but could pay an additional $75,000 or so next month after I sell the whole lot to the dealers up in New York. Would that be all right?" The speechless husband looked at the jeweler for a brief moment, then turned to the woman. The woman was still standing at the counter, silently staring at the jewelry spread out in front of her, trying hard to comprehend what the man had just said. Then, without warning, she fainted. Her husband rushed to reach her before she reached the floor. She revived quickly after he gently laid her on the little settee in front of the window. "Who should I make this check out to?" the man asked as he withdrew his checkbook from a drawer behind the counter. 3 weeks later, the jeweler parked his dusty Ford coupe in front of the little company house the man and the woman rented, stepped up on the rickety porch, and knocked on the door. The woman's husband invited him in and called out to the woman who was in the back room. Sitting in their kitchen at the scarred old wooden table with the two of them, the jeweler set aside the sweet tea the woman had brought him and opened his briefcase. He removed 2 items. First, he handed a white business envelope to the husband. "Here's the remainder of what I owe you. The gems were better than I thought. This check is for $97,000. That's after I took out the 10% for my fee. I hope that's acceptable. It's what's usual." The husband thanked the man, but was too overcome with emotion to say anything else. Then the jeweler handed the other package to the woman. It was wide and flat and wrapped in soft white paper. A red ribbon was tied around it. She accepted his gift without saying anything, a questioning look on her face. She laid it on the table in front of her. "What is it?" she asked as she started to carefully remove the wrapping. She carefully folded and set the wrapping paper at the edge of the table next to where she had placed the ribbon. Cautiously removing the lid from the delicate white cardboard box, She paused a brief moment, then gave out a low moan. Her eyes grew wide and started to tear up. "Oh, thank you, mister. Thank you so much. I can't tell you what this means to me." What looked like her grandmother's jewelry was laid out on a bed of white cotton. I had the gems replaced with glass that was made to look like the same as the gems. "You can't hardly tell the difference," the jeweler said. The woman slowly took the ring with the dark ruby-red glass out of the box and slipped it onto her finger. She held it up into the single ray of sunlight streaming in through the cracked kitchen window and wept for joy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Roxanne Kind, and I will be reading you a personal essay that I wrote titled, What If? Andrew and I slouched on our sofas, pretending to watch television, but our attention was on the clock. It was almost midnight, and my son would turn 18 years old in a few minutes. Both of us were full of angst as we only had a few hours left before I would drive him to the Marine recruiting station at 2 o'clock in the morning. Why did Andrew have to leave me on his birthday for the great unknown? I was angry hearing my husband snoring from the next room. How could he sleep when our son is leaving? My husband, the pragmatist, had reconciled with Andrew's decision. My son would begin a new adventure, but for me, it would be a 4-year sentence of constant worry and agonizing what-ifs. Andrew broke the news to us on Thanksgiving Day. I was shocked. After all, my son was the quintessential pacifist. He was quiet, intelligent, a private school student, or in other words, he was a privileged, spoiled Orange County teenager. He announced his decision while I served pumpkin pie. My mother was the first to respond. How wonderful. She was happy with his news. She was now my enemy and traitor. A shudder ran up my spine, and in a split second, I had imagined the worst that could happen to a young man in the military, as we were fighting a war in 2 countries. I tried to control my temper, but I couldn't. And I untypically screamed at my 86-year-old mother. "How can you say that? Please don't encourage him." Of course, I regretted those words the instant they left my mouth, as my poor mother's face showed shock. She reminded me that my brother had been in the Air Force as well as my father, serving in World War II for the Italian Army. Mother was quite proud of their military history. Still not able to control myself, I gritted my teeth and replied with venom in my voice. My brother served for 8 years, but his war only lasted a mere 8 days. He was safe and sound in Offutt, Nebraska. I asked my son if he was truly serious, and he didn't answer, just rolled his eyes. My husband kept silent as he had the benefit of being an attorney, was a master at self-control, and never would blurt out his opinions or feelings until he had done a complete analysis. I looked at him and wished that I could walk over to the other side of the table and shake him. For crying out loud, say something. My father had a quizzical look on his face and could not follow the conversation because of onset of Alzheimer's, but I knew he would have been on Andrew's side. My 16-year-old daughter looked dumbfounded and piped in, "I think it's real chill, Mom." Unable to eat the pie, I started clearing the table and was grateful that no one volunteered to help me with the dishes. I was glad that I had something to keep my hands busy while trying to stop the millions of war scenarios whirling in my head. A few days passed when my husband finally finished thinking about the situation and came to his analytical conclusion. First, he tried to bribe my son with an apartment of his own. It was declined. Secondly, he offered Andrew a year discovering Europe with all expenses paid. That too was rejected. Then he asked, "Why not join the Air Force like your uncle, and then it'll be a lot easier and safer for you?" My son laughed. "Could you please tell us why you are doing this?" I pleaded. "Your father and I struggled for our education, paid for it ourselves, climbed the corporate ladder so you and your sister can have advantages that we did not have. You don't need to join the military." My son answered calmly, a trait he got from his father. "Fighting for our country shouldn't only be for disadvantaged kids who need to join because they have nowhere else to go. We should all fight to preserve our great nation, every one of us." Well, that shut us up. There would be no arguing. His decision was made and therefore final, a trait he got from me. So there we sat, waiting for the clock to strike. Time either crawled or flew. It wasn't steady. We heard the bong of the clock twice, and we rose from our couches. I hugged my son very tightly, and I didn't want to let go. I drove him in silence because I was afraid that if I spoke, my voice would sound like a frog, and I would not be able to fight back tears. When we reached a desolate parking lot, the only light in the strip mall was that of the Marine recruiters. "Aren't you coming in to meet my recruiter and say goodbye?" I stared at my tall, handsome son and swallowed my tears and said, "If I met your recruiter, I would punch him in the stomach, kick him where it hurts, and when he was down, I would stomp on his body with all my might." He laughed and said, "My mom wears army boots. All 5 feet of you would be no match for any Marine." "Bye, Mom. See you soon. I love you." I couldn't answer for the lump in my throat, so I just smiled and nodded. The door slammed shut, and I took off from the parking lot as if I was in a starting lineup at the Daytona 500. I wasn't going to watch him walk away. After a few seconds, my tears fell and just kept falling. I thought of this beautiful day 18 years ago, about my happiness in delivering my first child. Now I had delivered him to unsafe hands. As I was wallowing in self-pity, I remembered that I had forgotten to wish him a happy birthday. The tears came harder, and I tried to stop them, but it was impossible. I let the tears come, and they arrived with such fury that I had to stop the car because I couldn't see the road. All the what-ifs were clogging my head, and I couldn't think clearly. I sat there in the deserted streets of Mission Viejo, thinking how long the road was going to be ahead of me. I would have to start counting the days till I would no longer feel afraid. Would time ever pass? Time did pass, slowly at first, but faster as time went by. After 3 months of boot camp, graduation day finally arrived. The graduating Marines ran for 8 miles while their families waited for them. After their run, we could see them from a distance, but we were not allowed near them as they were covered in sweat. Once again, we were made to wait while they showered and dressed. After a long hour, the Marines came marching out. We endured a short ceremony, and finally, they were released to their families. It was a great joy to spend a week with him. He was nervous and couldn't relax. The week flew by very quickly, and once again I said goodbye as he would spend another 3 months at the School of Infantry in Camp Pendleton. At the end of training, my son was selected to be an honor guard in Washington, D.C., the oldest Marine barracks called 8th and I. The old post is on land that Thomas Jefferson chose because it was marching distance to the White House. Andrew's job was varied. He stood guard at a general's funeral, performed at the evening parade along with the silent drill platoon, and attended special ceremonies. The following year, he became one of the Marching 24, a member of the exclusive USMC silent drill platoon. He performed in stadiums during halftime with audiences reaching over 50,000, as well as in small towns that looked up to them as if they were gods. He traveled to U.S. major cities and Bellewood, France. For his last year in the Marine Corps, he was asked to be a drill instructor for the silent drill platoon. True to Andrew's character, he turned the job down. He said he could not call himself a Marine unless he saw action and was immediately deployed to Afghanistan. The weight of many dark days fell on me, too many to remember. It was the not knowing that was most troubling. I would look at a map of Afghanistan for hours, wondering if he was safe. I glued myself in front of the television set to watch the news and suffered panic attacks, wondering what could be happening to him. I survived by keeping busy. Even went to graduate school to trick time and make it pass faster. Homecoming day finally arrived. He would be released from walking the desert and villages with a 30-pound machine gun and come home to me. Andrew walked into my foyer and said, "Hi, Mom," as if he had just been gone a short while and had come back from a grocery store. I knew I was the luckiest mom in the world. The Marine Corps had made him better, turned him into my own Captain America, but I can still feel that sick feeling in my heart when I remember them, especially when I think of the young men and women who didn't make it back. One of Andrew's friends returned home to Alabama, suffering from PTSD only to kill himself. His mother found him. So many lives devastated for the heroes and their families. I had put myself through hell with all my what ifs, but in the end, both of us had come out better because of it. He had become a man, more self-confident, and had a great perspective of the world. I had become grateful, patient, and a kinder woman. Life is more beautiful to me now. My son's military experience was a gift he gave me. I learned not to sweat the small stuff and be grateful for every moment that I share with him. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Pontecorvo, and I'm going to read you an excerpt from my story, Marysville. This piece is called Marysville Prelude. Maya Cologne wrapped her serape around her as she waddled across town in the chilly dawn. She pushed her black, silver-streaked hair out of her face, pinning it up with difficulty behind her ear. An elderly lady. Her hands were wrinkled and stiff, crippled by arthritis. But she liked the early morning, the cool, clean air before the heavy heat, and today, it being her turn to look after the old padre and the mission, she was enjoying the 2-mile walk through town. The picturesque Spanish mission, established over 250 years ago, was an oasis in the Sonoran Desert and had, over the years, attracted a town that assembled around it. It had now been an economic center for so long, no one in Marysville, if asked, could remember how it began. These days, the padre, Father Alma, said Mass each Sunday, married the young, and said last rites for the dying. He was too old to do much more than that, but was able to repeat the familiar, comforting Latin words to the individuals in need of them. So the maintenance of the mission's crumbling adobe church, rectory, and residence was left to volunteers, a small group of Catholic women who did the work. All were residents in town who gathered once a month to divide up the days of service. They cleaned, took out the trash that blew in from the streets outside the gates, and did the repair work they could manage. It was barely enough. Father Alma was the last one left who knew the history of the mission. True, it could be found in the old diaries and books kept in the mission library. But Maya liked listening to Father Alma tell the stories, particularly how the originals, the first missionaries, the ones who had arrived from Spain so long ago, had built the mission around the springs. One of the springs still bubbled up, feeding a pool on the mission grounds. She and the other women used the water for cooking and cleaning. They did for the padre. Maya also used it for the flower garden. It was one of her favorite tasks, tending the mission's gardens and watching the flowers bloom in spring. Today, as she entered the gate from the town square and passed by the residence, she saw Father Alma sitting outside in his favorite chair, a book on his lap, gently rocking back and forth in the morning breeze that came in off the desert. Thinking it a bit strange that he should be out so early, she was about to go to him, but then thought maybe he was in some reverie and decided not to disturb him. She would pray first before speaking with him and went into the church. Maya spent half an hour in the cool darkness reciting her rosary, asking God to bless her husband, son, and daughter. Done and feeling untroubled through prayer, she went out to speak with the padre to see what help he might need today. As she left the church, she saw him in his chair, still rocking in the morning breeze, and called to him, "Why didn't he hear me?" But then his hearing had gotten so bad recently. She touched his shoulder and looked down at him and saw the fixed smile on his frozen face. Eyes open, she realized that he had died. Maybe he had passed last evening while gazing at the stars in the heavens and had never made it to bed. Reading and rocking, he had passed on into the light. At that moment of discovery, Maya had a vision. The old padre had taken the town's spirit with him. The vibrant little desert town of Marysville she had grown up in would return to the small agricultural outlier it once was. She gently closed the padre's eyes, crossed herself, and said a prayer for the dead. Looking up at the church, she saw the ancient carved fresco over the door, the one brought from Spain so long ago, the one she had passed under so many times before. Prince Doom looked down at the well-heeled men and women cowering before him at the gates of hell. The lost souls cried out to all who entered the church, "As you are, so once were we. As we are, so shall you be." Maya lowered her eyes, crossed herself, and went into town to tell somebody. She knew she would not return to the mission until a new priest was found. With the priest's passing, the diocese did not supply another to take his place, and ownership of the property was passed to town. Marysville aldermen voted to turn this acquisition, the town's historic mission, a cardinal's legacy, into a tourist attraction, complete with a gift shop in the rectory and a fee of $5 to enter. It was about this same time that the interstate highway was completed and bypassed Marysville. The stream of tourists became a trickle. The desert continued to reclaim the closed military base outside of town, and it became noticeable to all in town that the flow of people and money into Marysville had reversed. People moved to Phoenix, Albuquerque, Los Angeles, places that offered economic opportunities and excitement. It became harder to make a living raising cattle, one of its main sources of income. Cattlemen were being beaten by bigger, more profitable corporations in California, Texas, and Florida. The town began to slowly deflate, like an old cracked tire, its energy leaking out east and west across the desert. People moved on to brighter futures. The millennium came and went. When folks in town bothered to stop and chat, the main topic was the weather. Instead of what's new, talk was only about the heat, the drought, and who had moved away. The citizens passed on. The weather remained. It framed the lives of all who continued to live in the valley. Its blazing presence obscured another need the people of Marysville now shared but took for granted: water. The 18th century corporate ambitions of Spain that had built the Maravilla mission, now Marysville, had met the 21st century at a boundary with no clear way forward. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dinah Lynn. Today I'm going to share with you the introduction and 2 excerpts from my memoir with a message, Daring to Dream Once Again. It's never too late. This book is a dream come true for me, a dream that refused to die. It waited patiently for me for several decades until one day it could wait no longer. In 2010, I relocated to the U.S. after spending a decade in Beijing. I went to China after retirement to study Chinese and reconnect with my roots. Of course, I hadn't planned on staying a decade. One day, out of nowhere, and seemingly for no reason, I burst into tears while driving, which turned into sobbing. Deep down, I knew why my heart was crying. I was letting my dream of writing a book slip away, day by day, month by month, and year by year. I knew then, with every fiber of my being, that I simply had to write my book, and time was of the essence. I was soon turning 70, and for the first time in my life, I contemplated my remaining days on earth. There was still much I wished to do, to contribute to others, and I needed to start by writing my book. Sometimes in life, we cause ourselves to travel a circuitous route because we resist what we know deep down. The vision seems too grand and scares us. I believe all along I knew the story I wished to share was my own story. My pride in being Chinese American from the time I was a child growing up in Ohio. A life lived on both sides of the globe, doing it backwards by starting my career at age 36, obtaining a senior political appointment in Washington, D.C., finally breaking the glass ceiling in corporate America, and much more. But the idea of writing a memoir seemed pretentious to me. Thus, it took me many months and a few false starts before I finally put aside my reservations and simply started writing my stories. Each person's experience is unique to him or her. At the same time, we are all informed and enriched by each other's experience and stories, living examples of universal truths. By sharing mine, I hope I can remind you of your own precious stories and dreams. From the outset, I knew I wanted to start with my mom. It was her courage and determination that enabled me, together with my 2 siblings, to escape on the last boat out of Shanghai before it was taken over by the communists in 1949. My dad was already in the U.S. on a one-year research grant and had planned to return until Mom wrote him and told him to stay. She'd find a way to get us out. As I neared the end of writing my stories, I realized each major new phase of my life started with a dream, whether I knew it then or not. Thus, the 6 parts of this book were born, each representing a major new phase of my life. The title came to me early on, months before I started any writing. I had just come back from a workshop and was using colored pens to free associate different words. Daring to Dream resonated with me immediately, but the URL was not available. I tried Daring to Dream once again, and it was available. I liked this even better. A few words, a simple phrase, can shift our emotions and perspective. Daring to Dream once again became my challenge to myself, my rallying cry, my inspiration to finally start writing my book, to know that it's never too late. It is my fondest hope that this book can be an inspiration to you as well. Believe that it's never too late to make a fresh start, and never too late to dream once again. Whatever your circumstance, whatever stage of life you're at, whatever your age, it's never too late. I like to say, as long as you're breathing, it's not too late. Within every soul, there's a song waiting to be sung. Only you can sing your song your way. Chapter 1, A Mother's Dream. Freedom Lies in Being Bold, Robert Frost. A Privileged Childhood. Mom was the youngest of 5 children, a decade younger than the next sibling, and nearly 20 years younger than her oldest brother. She was born in Beijing and always proud of being a Beijing person. The family endured many years of hardship, losing its prosperous trading business during the Boxer Rebellion in the early 1900s. Her grandpa moved the family to Shenyang, the capital of Liaoning province, northeast of Beijing, to start over again. Cousin says, Mom brought the family good luck. After she was born, the family photography business began to thrive, with elite clients from academia, government, and the film industry. Her dad regularly traveled to Tokyo to buy film, supplies, and equipment. She talked about this in my younger days, but I had forgotten until a happy serendipity occurred. In the early 90s, as Vice President, Worldwide Business Development for Burger King, I regularly traveled to Asia. On one of my business trips back to the U.S. from Beijing, connecting through Tokyo, I was wandering around the gift shops in the terminal, looking for something to bring back to Mom. I finally decided to bring her an assortment of Japanese sticky sweet rice balls, and hoping she'd like them. I'd just arrived at Mom's house in Williamsburg, Virginia, after my 24-hour door-to-door trip. I came down the stairs into her kitchen and said, Mom, I brought a little something back for you. I hope you like it. Opening the box and seeing what was inside, Mom was like a child at Christmas. With rare emotion, she said, My dad used to always bring these back for me from his trips to Tokyo. I could see a flood of wonderful childhood memories coming back to her as she tasted these sweets. I then remembered her telling me about his trips and always bringing something back for her. I had totally forgotten this. I was so happy that I just happened to bring her the Japanese sweets this time, and I did so each time after that. Escaping Shanghai. Hurry, quick, we can't miss the boat. There was urgency in my mom's voice and a tinge of fear as she helped us push our way through the mob of people all trying to get on the small ship. We held hands tightly, my younger brother, older sister, and I. It was 1949, and this was the last ship to leave Shanghai before the communists seized full control of the city and sealed off avenues of escape. When I was growing up in Ohio, more than once I used to think, but for the grace of God, I would have been a Red Guard. Our small ship was dangerously overcrowded, but we were among the lucky ones. We had a bunk, one bunk for the four of us, so we could take turns sleeping, and we had a place to sit during the day. Luckily, it was also the top bunk and next to a porthole. Thank goodness for some fresh air. Both my parents taught by example. Neither ever told us in so many words to study hard, get good grades, and excel in school. They simply let us know, by example and in their own way, we were expected to do our best. For my part, I always felt a responsibility to my parents to excel. I wanted them to be proud of me. This feeling and attitude was an important motivator and touchstone for me growing up. Equally important, as far back as I can remember, I felt a responsibility to be a good example of being Chinese American. Here we were, the only Asian American family in a small town in Ohio. How did I get this sense of responsibility from such a young age? I don't know. It seems this was simply always a part of me, of my being, and it remains so to this day. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of Prose Performance and found it entertaining. Many people think about writing a book or a poem, but never get around to it. The Publishing Club is the place in Laguna Woods to get the support, knowledge, and resources you need to begin and sustain that process. Your stories can make a difference. Write them down and share them with others. If you would like more information on the authors in this show and where their books are available, please visit our website. The website also contains an application to join the Publishing Club with useful information on how you can publish your own writing. We hope you will attend our monthly workshops the third Wednesday of each month in Clubhouse 3, the Performing Arts Center, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Many Laguna Woods writers will be there, ready to tell you how they did it. We are glad you could join us. Until next time, goodbye.